Hi there. So this is an early draft and I haven't shared it with anyone yet, but I wrote it one night when reflecting on an experience I had last year. Ever have a memory just like flood back to you? So yeah, I just used talk to text, which isn't usually how I write my stuff. So I thought, why not share it as spoken for the first time? Um, so the only time that I was truly satisfied with a moment of interaction with a complete stranger during my knee surgery recovery occurred upon my leaving my weekly therapy session. I was far along enough in my recovery that I could take the stairs if I had the time and if I had the energy. I'd have to take the stairs one at a time. Bad one down, they'd always say. They being the doctor and the physical therapist. I often thought that was an odd way to put it, considering my bad one during knee surgery recovery was the one that was supposed to be fixed. My good one during knee surgery recovery was the one that was supposed to be fixed. The bad one, perhaps, should be labeled as the one more need of care at the moment. Not to mention the fact that my left, the one still in line for surgery, seemed to only get worse as it bared the brunt while I had to baby the right. So there I was, taking one creaky step after another down the stairway I remember taking many times before the surgery. A young woman around the same age as me passed me on the stairs with a bounce in her step. I briefly wondered if she too just got out of a therapy session. Maybe it was a really good one. I remembered before my surgery, I often left that building just as cheerfully. Personal breakthroughs in therapy sometimes feel effervescent. I was vaguely aware that there are many offices in this old Victorian building, and I was sure that there were offices used for things other than therapy. Maybe she had other business here, maybe not. I suppose I'll never know for sure, and that's okay, I suppose. When she reached the front door at the bottom of the steps, she did that strange thing that I was starting to become uncomfortably used to, where someone would see me and my crutches and insist on holding the door open for me. It was a nice gesture, but as someone who's lived with their disability their entire life, only to now have that visible, it left me feeling very uncomfortable most times. It didn't help that a lot of the times this action was accompanied by an invasive question or an inappropriate comment that I'm sure they meant nothing by, or perhaps a look of pity that I detested. It would take far too much explaining to any stranger for them to understand that though I looked more broken on the outside than I ever had, I felt more whole than I ever had. This wasn't a one-off injury. This was a surgery of necessity because my own body hurt itself again and again. I took one breath and one stare at a time, mentally preparing myself for any of the aforementioned generic, at this point expected responses that never seemed to be as helpful for me as it was for those offering them. I can't tell you for sure, but chances are that was one of the topics I had just been discussing in my therapy session. She smiled expectantly at me with a warmness that seemed more sincere than previous experiences. As I drew closer to her waiting for me by the door, she spoke two simple words in the form of a question, two simple words that saw me in my experience more than any other stranger had. Knee surgery? A light lilt at the end of her voice. I nodded, taken aback a little bit. By the time I reached the last step, I responded, yeah, and a big one too. She held the door open for me as I walked through it. As we emerge outside together, she said something that I will never forget. Well, happy healing. I often wondered since that day if she knows just how much that touched me and just how unique her approach really was. Suddenly, I became very aware that I was so upset about the people who asked invasive questions because they didn't care at all when my knee condition was invisible to them. Because the millions of times my knees have dislocated, leaving me on my ass in front of another person, nobody had ever asked that many questions. Because for so many years, I felt nobody acknowledged what I was going through at all, not only with my knees, but with my mental health, with existing in this world, with daring to be. It's amazing how much of this rushed to me all at once. Then I said back to her, happy healing to you too, for whatever you're going through. She smiled at me in a way that seemed to indicate that my statement touched her too. Thank you. I'd never seen her again after that day, and I couldn't even really tell you what she looked like. I bet I couldn't tell her out of a crowd or even a lineup. What I remember is that she saw me that day, and I felt I saw her too, even though she knew nothing more than what she could see of me, and I knew nothing more of her than the kindness she showed me that day. I truly hope she's made boundless progress on whatever she was healing from at that time, because she's helped me make boundless progress on my healing from then till today and probably for the rest of my life. Thank you all.
Thank you, Kasandra. That was so moving.